I was like, and Natalie, you're a little force. You know, nobody's made friends with her yet, but I saw how well she was doing in challenges. I was like, she reminds me of like a little Camilla with what she can do, you know? And I was like, in her endurance and the way that she performed, her and Nicole performed just up the Rock of Gibraltar day one. So I was like, you guys, you know, they were trying to, there was rumors, people were trying to get me and Nicole against each other in an elimination just so that one of us would be guaranteed to leave. And so I was like, look, Nicole, us three, we have each other. And she agreed to it. She goes, I didn't make promises to anybody else. Like, I would take care of you over anybody else. And I was like, okay. So I made a deal with Nicole and Natalie that we would have each other's backs till the end. And Natalie was in the troika multiple times. She could have thrown me in multiple times, but she's like, you know what? She goes, she considered me to be a good competitor. She's like, I've seen you before. I know your resume. She's like, and I want to run against you in a final and beat you. And I was like, that's bomb. And that's the type of girl that I want to align with. You know, someone that puts their money where their mouth is and has the confidence to run and perform because they're confident enough in themselves that they're not going to freak out and try to get rid of someone that they think they could beat them because they're confident enough in themselves to do what they need to do to win. And if they don't, they tip their hat to the winner and say, I'll get you next time. And that's who I want to play with. That's who I want to align with. I don't play with scared people.
Is it safe to say that that there's almost enough like newer people trying to come after, say, like the crowns of like you and Johnny, that it's almost like it's almost unfair, like it's almost the tide is turning that much that
it's not that it's unfair. It's just part of the game, and I've learned to live with it. But it is you know, it does kind of dig me a little bit that when I first started doing challenges, you know, people wanted to get rid of me because I was weird or they thought I was weak. And then as I kept going, then they wanted to get rid of me because I was annoying and weird. And then they wanted to get rid of me because like they find a reason, you know, and they have the numbers. And so the fact that I have made it to so many finals with having the biggest elimination record really says something. It shows that I've had to fight my way to get everything I've ever gotten in my challenge career because I haven't had an easy road. Nobody's just, you know, pulled my hand and said, here you go, I'm going to give you this. I've had to fight for it. That's why I've been in so many eliminations, because I've come back from so many eliminations. That's why my, you know, challenge career, I've gone to so many finals because I've fought my way to get there. One way or another, I've fought my way to get there. And, you know, go ahead.
No, I agree. And that's why it was so, you know, fulfilling to kind of watch you win that one, especially, you know, riding that second place win out with you on the Dirty 30. And seeing you from your very first challenge to where you've gone. How many eliminations has it been? What is the elimination record? And how does the Bloodlines compare? The Bloodlines win with your cousin compared to the individual win by yourself?
I don't even know how many. I've been in, I think, 17 maybe. I'm not sure. 17 eliminations. I'm not too sure. I've lost track. And plus there was, you know, the one that I had to do actually on Dirty 30, which was coming back and having to beat 4 other girls in a puzzle, which is a total equalizer because anybody could have won that. It wasn't just running with weight on your back. It was trying to figure out a damn puzzle. And I sent 4 of the girls that should have done very well in that home when there was no advantage to being in shape or not. So earned that in Dirty 30. I just feel like I know, and I want to talk about vendettas too. I feel like the reason a lot of people, or not a lot of people, a certain select few people, because, you know, I don't want to go with a lot because there's really not a lot. A certain select loud group of people are trying to get rid of me, is I find a lot of their dislike of me because they can't even go pee alone. They need to be around each other 24/7, whether it's taking photos with each other just for photo ops, whether it's, you know, trying to hang out just to get people to know that they're hanging out together, whether it's, you know, to be fake friends on a challenge, like that they don't even trust each other. See, I keep who I trust very few and far between, and I like quality over quantity, and I'm comfortable being alone. And I think the fact that I don't walk into a challenge feeling like I need a whole herd of people, a whole giant alliance on my back, like I know I can handle myself on my own, and I don't put a lot of stock in having a giant group around me, I think that intimidates a lot of people, and that because they don't have enough confidence in themselves on their own. Do you know what I mean? So that's where I'm seeing a lot of dislike and a lot of attacking. Same as people attacking Johnny too, is because Johnny, used to have the groups, and now he just walks in and he's like, I know what I bring to the table. I know how I do in challenges. I'm just going to do it. And Johnny's going to have, I'll give you a little inside info on the Final Reckoning. Johnny's going to have a real hard go this time. The numbers are not in his favor. And you might actually find yourself siding with the devil. That's all I'm going to say.
You either, I always say in life, there's the Batman adage of you either die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become the villain. I think in professional wrestling and in the challenge, maybe even the villains, if they stick around for long enough, maybe become the good guys or the heroes again. So maybe that's what we're seeing with Johnny. Something you mentioned.
Did we just call Johnny a villain?
Yeah, of course.
Johnny the devil?
I mean,
she said the devil. I said a villain.
Is he the bad guy? Is it official? Is it officially okay to call him the bad guy, the villain?
He's been the guy that you love to hate.
Yeah.
People loved to hate him.
He's the Ric Flair.
And so, this challenge, keep an eye on Johnny, because if you have any feelings against him, you might find yourself rooting for him. And that's the only little tip and little advice or little sneaky peeky that I'm going to give you guys, a little treat there. You may or may not find yourself rooting for the bananas this time around. But anyway.
Before we get to the finale and the final that you won, I want to get to the last sort of big move or decision you made that got people talking. And it comes into play with what you said there about having quote-unquote deals with just Natalie and Nicole. I think people are surprised to hear that you didn't say Kyle, because you guys, there was that famous move there where you threw Leroy in instead of Kyle, which he came on our show shortly after that. He was a little bit offended by it, or at least you not giving him the heads up. And to me, I looked at that as like, oh, well, her and Kyle clearly have a deal that supersedes her history with Leroy. So talk about that, how what you and Kyle had was sort of separate from what you would call a deal. And then talk about that move you made and whether you regret it.
Well, do I regret it now? Yes. Did I regret it then? No. And the reason is because when, I don't know what they showed because I didn't get to see the episode yet, but on the challenge where Cam threw me the grenade, Brad threw Kyle his grenade, and we were doing the swimming thing for the Burger King challenge, and our team was set up to fail the treasure chest vendettas challenge. On that, when it came time to voting, I don't know what you saw, but it turned into Leroy had my back, and he voted. It was we knew it was either going to be Kayla or me getting voted in, because Leroy was never going to say Cam's name. Understandable. I mean, it was going to be Kayla or me. So I told him, I'm like, look, then say Kayla's name. So Leroy says Kayla's name. Kyle says Kayla's name. I say Kayla's name. Nelson, who's had it against me from day one, said my name. Kayla said my name. And Cam said my name, because those three girls were against me. So it came down to a tie. And at that point, it wasn't until we deferred it over to the Troika, and then they basically saved my ass, and then Cam got put on the line, that Leroy started freaking out and goes, no, that's not fair. Like, she wasn't even a name on there. Can I redo it? And he wanted to redo it so that I would go into the elimination, not Cam. So right then and there, I saw that Leroy had Cam over me for 1,000,000% sure. When he was trying to get things flipped and switched, can I change my vote? Like, he wanted to put me in to save Cam. That bothered me because I'd been doing so many challenges with Leroy, and I felt like me and Leroy had a bond. And I'm like, really? I'm like, a girl you just met this season, you're going to have over me. And I was like, you know what? And then Kyle was like, yo, you can't be upset with Leroy. Like, that's his girl. Like, that's, he would have, of course he's going to save her over you. Like, that's
very
Cam.
smart of him to say that and phrase it that way. I think he might have been implying that you should do the same.
Well, I mean, and so what happened? No, he was just trying to tell me he really likes Leroy. He was actually trying to be like, you can't be mad at Leroy for that. Like,
right, but because he's the Cam in this scenario, sort of with you. He's the new person on your side this particular season.
He sneaks right into those alternative thoughts there. I didn't look at it that way. I just looked at it as like, yeah, you're right. I'm not going to be mad about it. But I'm like, but I'm going to keep it in my head. So when it came time, the biggest thing that I did wrong by Leroy was because my spot was already secured in the final. I actually wasn't sure what I was going to do. And I never gave him the heads up that I was going to say his name. And that's the biggest problem right there. And I think a lot of it was because I wasn't 100% sure which way I wanted to go, because I had a lot of thoughts in my head. Number one, it's like, who do I want to run a final with the most? I was actually thinking Brad, because I'm like, who do I want by my side? And I thought Brad, being a school teacher, he'd be smart. I thought, he's really strong. I'm like, he's a good swimmer. I'm like, Brad's been to finals before. He's done this before. Kyle's new, And I was like, maybe I want to run this, because I'm still thinking in my head, we're not running this individual. We're running this with a partner. And I'm like, and Brad's been killing it in challenges this season. I was like, so Brad would probably be the best choice to run a final with. I was like, and then there's Kyle. And Kyle, I obviously had a romantic involvement with. And I felt like his story and what he told me, like I don't know if they really went into anything that like went on between me and him, but like we had a really deeper connection than probably was even shown. Like we spent a lot of time alone together, a lot of time talking about his family, about his life, his friends, things at home, and what he's been through, like some serious things. Like he opened up to me a lot. And I'm going to keep a lot of those things to myself, obviously. Like they were setting confidence. And so I wanted him, even though in my heart, I was like, well, if he's my partner in a final, I'm like, at least I know he won't quit. He might not be the best on paper, but he's won a lot of challenges, and I know that he will not quit because I've seen him on Ronda. I've seen him on Gibraltar, and he's gone till his eyes roll back in his head and he's vomiting, his lungs out, because he's literally given every last drop of his soul. Like I ran the pallets with him on the beach and I saw him, and I was like, this guy has heart. And what he's been through in his own life and what the challenge meant to him is different than what it meant to Leroy and Brad. Like it was just a whole different level of making his family proud, making himself proud, being something that his family and friends didn't think he could be or do, like he was the joke. And I wanted him to have that, not just because I was banging him, but because of his story and what he told me that it meant to him. And in other words, keeping him out of trouble at home, basically. And what he was saying was, if he makes it to the final, what the challenge has done to him is like he's going to clean up his life when he goes home. He's not going to go down the path that he's lost friends to. Do you know what I'm saying? So I really wanted that for him in that way. And then Leroy, I wanted just because. Oh, plus Kyle saved me. Kyle and Brad were the reasons. They had been in the Troika so many times. Like they were the reasons that I didn't get voted into the elimination. Like they saved me, so I owed them a solid too. Leroy didn't win anything all season. He never was able to help me in anything, and except for a vote, which if he could have done it over again, he would have voted me in. I love Leroy, but look at it. Leroy's the lovable Leroy, but you got to look at my story and what I've been through and everything else as to what ended up in this decision. So Leroy, my only thing with him was like he reminds me of me in challenges. He reminds me of when there's something scary, like I'm going to be scared too. Like I always look at Leroy as like my source of comfort and comedy. And I freaking love that guy. Love him. And so for me, it was a really hard choice because I wanted to win the final. And I thought it was going to be partners. So who do I want as a partner? Who do I want by my side? And then also the story aspect of what each person is going through and what the final means to them. And I was really, number one, I knew Brad wasn't going to get picked. I knew for me in my head, I'm like, Kayla and Tony are going to vote the exact same way. I'm like, and Tony's going to want to save Kyle. I was like, so Kayla's going to go with Tony because she doesn't give a fuck. And she's going to, save Kyle too. Like that was what was in my head. I didn't communicate with Tony and I didn't communicate with Kayla. And I didn't communicate with them until right before we walked into the elimination. And I was like, who are you guys voting for? And Tony's like, I'm saving my boy Kyle. He goes, so Tony wanted to put in Leroy. Kayla was like, I made a deal with Leroy. I'm saving Leroy, so I'm going to put in Kyle. And I was like, what? And I was like, really? And I was like, shit. And it was right there that I was like, Leroy, I'm like, I'm going to have to say, like, I told Leroy right there that, like, right before we walked in, and he's like, what? Don't do this to me right now. And I was like, I'm sorry, I didn't know. I thought Tony and Kayla were 1,000% going to say Leroy or Brad's name or whatever, like who they wanted to get rid of or who they wanted to save. I thought they were going to both save Kyle because that's what Tony wanted. And that's what I thought. And I didn't do the research. I was lost in la-di-da land. And so when it came down to it, I was like, look, at this point, it's either I save Brad and it's a 3-way tie and it goes to who knows what they're going to do with that. Or I save Leroy or I save Kyle. And at that point I was like, you know what? I want to give this, I want Kyle to have this. And so I picked Kyle and unfortunately,